Now, this round has seen a lot of injuries, and the big one, of course, is Anton Lienert-Brown. He did not look good off the back of that, and he's going to see a specialist. That is the line. He's seeing a specialist later this week, so we will know more. But, Mills, your thoughts on that? It's pretty huge in the grand scheme of not just the Super Rugby, but the bigger picture for New Zealand rugby, because he looked in all sorts of pain. And Sam Cane even said post-match he didn't like the look of it.
Yeah, massive as well. I mean, he's a leader within the Chiefs, and when you look at sort of that, he's just going in for the ball. I hope it's not instability in terms of the shoulder. He's already sort of hurt. But the bigger picture as well, with the All Blacks and whatnot, he will be a massive loss, and he'll be hurting because he's only just come back from injury as well.
We love a debate. We talk about positions in the All Blacks all the time. Anyone I spoke to, when you talk about the midfield, he's the first guy you write down, and that's who you're going to play with him, JK. I mean, that's the reality, the impact he's had. And he was just starting to show those signs. Yeah. Last year, he had that wee knee niggle. He didn't quite have that explosiveness. He was just starting to show those signs. So I can only hope that the news is in some way positive, but it didn't look good. And you know, all of a sudden, if you start talking significant shoulder injuries, those are a long process. So we've just got to hope, JK.
Yeah, and I feel really sorry for Anton. I think he's an amazing young man. You know, often talks about his mental health, so he's leading in that space. And, yeah, if it's the same shoulder, Mills, you know, that sort of doubles the problem. I think the saddest thing that I think about is combinations. You know, he was a bit of a rock there when he was well. He hasn't been well for a couple of years, which has been tough. But it really puts pressure on our combinations. You know, when you start thinking about winning World Cups, you know, you go Nonu, Conrad Smith, you know, the great era from Australia with Horan and Little, you know, our locks have a pairing. I think there's positions where you've just got to know each other defensively, Mills. You know, you've got to know that your mate's on your inside, but also just that little subtle stuff. You know, you go through a hole, you might throw a blind pass, but it's not actually blind because you know you're there. So what is our midfield? We haven't had any consistency with Goodhue being out, Anton Lienert-Brown being out. You know, I'd say that Fozzie would be, you know, having a quiet grappa before he goes to sleep, just to get to sleep.
There's a guy about 6'4" who's been playing the Hurricanes the last couple of weekends. All of a sudden, has that become more of an option? As much as you're talking about this one, I was really sad to see Shannon Frizell go down in the first couple of minutes of the Highlanders game as well, because the blindside flanker position was one we've talked about. Tupo Vai'i had been put into that role for the Chiefs. He's not out there at the moment either. Akira Ioane is not out there either. There's obviously clearly a number of Crusaders, loose forwards, that would like that responsibility, but just Shannon had been playing so well, Mills. His carrying, his defensive work. He's got a scan tomorrow, I understand. I text Brownie to find out the extent of it. But if it's an MCL, it might not be. That can be a sort of 6 to 7 weeks, and that's maybe not so bad. They lost Manaki Sowi Rickett as well, a similar injury. So, but yeah, losing Shannon, I think, huge for them, but also for that depth at the 6th position.
Oh, I think in terms of the way he's been playing, he's in a struggling team. He was getting go-forward ball. He just stepped up another level from where he sort of come from, and then to have this little setback. I hope the same. I hope it's only sort of something, you know, minor, and that it's not too long. But certainly, with the way he's been playing, he's been huge.
We've talked about big players and their impact on their teams, on their games, on the competition. And, Jeff, there was a couple that you picked out that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I'm talking up the Blues again.
Can you stop, please?
No, I'm talking them up because...
Here. What's going on?
Because you have to do a lot of things, and you have to put together an environment. They've started to do that. Clearly they've done that with Liam McDonald. But then you've got to create depth, and you want to bring in experience. Now, for the last 3 seasons, we haven't seen at Super Rugby level Luke Romano play anything like what we're seeing him play right now for the Blues. He's a reinvigorated player, was outstanding for Canterbury last year in the NPC, in the Bunnings NPC. He's come to Auckland. He's loving being here. He's seeing different things in a different environment. I'm gutted he hasn't done this sooner, JK. The fact that he could have been somewhere else for 3. He played 2 appearances last year for the Crusaders off the bench. He's come to Auckland and has clearly made a difference with this Blues team in terms of experience and developing players. This is one of the reasons when you see the depth that the Blues have created. There's another player I want to talk about in a moment. But for me, Romano, regardless of the odd card he gives away, but he's brought something they didn't have.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you saying it must have been the hardest decision for him ever to leave. And when you talk about cultures, I think the Crusaders have probably led the way in the last 15 years.
Players want to play.
Yeah,
players want to play, right?
Yeah, I understand that. But I think, you know, he is in the twilight of his career, so it would have been a really hard decision. But the rest of it I agree with.
Why is he in the twilight of his career? Why are we putting a number?
He's 400, isn't he? How old is he?
Well, I tell you what, no one wants to run into a Mills. I can tell you that for a fact, and you know you've been run into when he's got the ball.
He's well refreshed as well. A different environment, perhaps really hesitant to come up to Auckland initially, but now he's probably, I mean, the leadership sort of aspect that he's been given, he's really thrived in that, and so he's brought that steel amongst within the Blues. And when you thought about it, when I looked at it and the team they put out, you know, himself and also who was the other lock? Goodhue, you know, a lot of height sort of missing there without Derry there, but they obviously wanted to bring that physical aspect. And what did he do? He went out there and absolutely dominated. So refreshed, but also he's been given a responsibility. When guys like that get responsibilities, they love their environment. So it's fantastic to see him play so well.
The other guy I want to talk about is Bryce Heem. So when he came back into the environment, I think last year with the Blues, where was Bryce Heem been? And obviously he'd been overseas, he'd played for the New Zealand Seven sides. This guy here, his versatility, playing both second five, centre and on the wing for them. When they lost to Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, there was a question mark about, OK, how are they going to reshuffle their backline? All of a sudden, this guy here, I think he's been outstanding once again. A player with experience, balance, confident under pressure, doing the simple things well, not making errors, you know, and that's why when you reintroduce Roger Tuivasa-Sheck back into the team, what does that do to the whole back line? I mean, we start, what do I do with Rico now?
Well, you picked two key aspects of the Blues game. Two guys that know their job, you know. They don't bring any fancy stuff. They just know their job and do their job at 100%, but do it really well. Really physical in terms of Romano. When you look outside with him, he just does the basics and does them really well. That's the stability they've needed for a very long time, JK. So when you bring a Roger back in there, you slot him in there, then you bring a little bit of X factor. So they're going to be dangerous. Yeah,
they lost Plummer as well, which probably, you know, they'll probably go to training and go, wow, you know. Bryce, what do you reckon, mate? You know, he was fantastic, I think, since he's been here. Last year, I thought he was really good. Played a lot of games on the wing. And when they put him there, I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. But he probably wobbled a wee bit at North Harbour a couple of times on defence, but he's fixed that up really quickly and he's really solid now, getting the ball over the advantage line. So good. So, yeah, I don't disagree. I think, you know, some of those older heads can really help a younger side. Because what I said yesterday is this is a young Blues side. And they need that experience just to calm them.
And that winning experience from Romano as well, which has also been very helpful. So let us take a look now at the All Blacks coaching unit. Jeff, what is going on here? You got coaches for coaches now.
Well, look, yeah, the interesting thing is both teams did a review at the end of last season. So you think about the All Blacks coaching team. Look, Ian Foster, John Plumtree, Greg Feek, Brad Moore, they've all been there, Scott McLeod. Joe Schmidt is clearly being brought into the environment to add some leadership and support around the selectors. So they've done a review and clearly, on the back of the information from the players and their performance, they've looked at a couple of areas that they feel as though they need help. And that's in the forward pack, as Scrum. And Mike Cron is one of the best in the world. He's done the job before. I'm interested to see how much hands-on work these guys are going to do. And Andrew Strawbridge, a skill set in terms of their execution is another area they've highly identified. So, bottom line, it's a big team to manage, though, JK. And in terms of, as you know, the amount of time there is on a training pitch to prepare the players, what does it suggest to you that all of a sudden there's that many voices, or is this pure and simply about gathering more information and getting, I suppose, different feedback about how they can get better?
Well, I could probably give you another voce di corridoio. They'll need 2 buses. One for the coaching staff and one for the team. Yeah, no, I think seriously for me, what has come out of the review, and has this been done because of something that came out of the review? And if that's the case, I don't mind. Yeah. I think, you know, we've got 18 tests, I keep saying.
Well, you're not singing
18
yet.
tests. And I just think it's really, really important that Fozzie goes, OK, these were the weaknesses last year, Mills, and this is what we're going to do to fill it. I do think the concern is too many voices, but that's something I'm hoping that they'll be aware of. You know, I think I don't really believe coming in to help, your All Black coaches should be the best in the world. So maybe it's filling a couple of gaps.
Well, Mike Cron's proved he's the best in the world, though, Mills. He's done that before. Look, he's got a role with World Rugby as well. I just think a lot of this is about, you know, them trying to get just that little bit of extra support. And sometimes you need a different voice to challenge you.
Well, that's my concern. I'm similar to you, JK, the fact that we've got so many voices on there. Are we that sort of behind the rest of the world, the fact that we need guys to come in? I know there was a review based on that, but what do you prioritise, leading into these 18 sort of test matches that they're on. So when you look at France and, obviously they're leading the way, but what do we need to get to that level? I know that these guys have come in because we've lacked a little bit of skill, apparently, because, of the COVID aspect as well. But what are the others? What are the rest of the world sort of done? So are we that far behind? And some of this sort of seems to me, I hope they're not panicking too much and they really prioritise the needs of getting us, back up there.
It looks complicated.
It does look complicated. But it's necessary, and this is the All Blacks we're talking about here. So clearly they've gone to the high-performance team at New Zealand Rugby. They've gone to the board and said, this is what we need to perform, and everyone signed off on it. So everyone at New Zealand Rugby has to be in on this together.
I hope they ask Wayne Smith.